In 314, corrupted blood was decoupled from bleeding. Before that, corrupted blood was just a really nasty form of bleeding, so there were a lot of ways to counter it. However, now it is a non-ailment physical damage over time effect, and that gets a little bit problematic. If you're unlucky enough to be inflicted with corrupting blood, your health will drop faster than your sub-count when you say that grinding your games did a good thing. And when it comes to them doing good things, the fact that they added freeze immunity to Arctic armor was one of the best decisions to come out of the rework of how ailments are dealt with in 315. Going forward into 316, we're going to see more of this kind of solution, where it's not about using your flasks as little anti-ailment trinkets. It's about dealing with ailments in multiple ways using skills and auras that you already have, and potentially seeing some bonuses on items. But there wasn't much discussion around corrupted blood, and that could be problematic since there were a lot of ways that you could counter it in the past, which as of 314 are no longer available. This is going to be an attempt to talk about the ways in which you can mitigate corrupted blood, and also look at potential solutions for 316 and going forward, for ways that mitigation can be integrated in a similar manner to how GGG has talked about, so that players have options and don't feel so pigeonholed into just buying a corrupting blood jewel. This look at Path of Exile mechanics and future theory crafting was made possible in part due to the generous support of my patrons and YouTube channel members. More on how you can support at the end of the video. But for now, let's start by going over the ways in which you can get corrupting blood immunity or remove and prevent the damage. I'm not going to count the Pantheon here, just because even though it does prevent you from going up to 10 stacks, 5 stacks are still probably going to kill you. So it doesn't really matter if you're dead or double dead in that case. A corrupted blood jewel, on the other hand, will prevent you from gaining any stacks ever, and this is a great solution if you're in softcore trade. But it feels a little bit weird for a corrupted blood jewel to be the mandatory de facto solution across all builds. Options are good, and mandatory things are not. You could use a staunching flask. This will remove all stacks and give you 4 seconds of immunity. But if the idea is to move flask affixes away from just being anti-ailment trinkets, this also doesn't make sense as a long-term solution. Now, from Delve, you can get corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you on both gloves and a shield. Unfortunately, there's probably one person who watches this video who will actually know that existed, and if you're in SSF and you go after Fizz nodes, good for you. Congratulations, you found a really niche mechanic that can be useful. If you're everyone else, will it be a great solution to give up a shield slot or a glove slot in a trade league setting? Probably not, you're just going to go to the jewel, which then brings us back to the diversity problem. And of course, the last solution would be to not worry about it at all because you're never hitting or killing anything by playing traps, mines, totems, or minions, which is probably the solution with the most diversity we've discussed so far. But it would be nice if we had a few more options. I'm going to give an honorable mention to Adamant because it does remove corrupting blood when you use a guard skill, and also remove bleeding when you use a guard skill, which is quite nice. It's also at the bottom of a tree and doesn't give any damage and gives fairly negligible defenses to most builds. So I don't see it as a solution that'll be popular, but it is a nice option to have for builds that can utilize it. So moving on, bleeding as a whole had a lot more ways to counter it. For example, you could be a Slayer and be unaffected, or get a Malevolence Watcher's Eye. On the other hand, you could be a Necromancer and use bone armor. Now similarly, Chris Wilson mentioned that Steel Skin might just make you immune to bleeding or remove bleeding when it activates. Hopefully this will also apply to corrupted blood, but if it doesn't, this might be a good way to buff the Necromancer Ascendancy, and allow bone armor to give you immunity to both bleeding and corrupting blood, thus giving you a more all-round solution for the Ascendancy version. Similarly, so Slayer isn't left out and so he has a friend, we can give that to him too, and maybe even give you unaffected by corrupting blood rather than full immunity, in case there's ever a build based on a unique item that wants corrupting blood on itself at all times for some ungodly reason. Another solution that I can think of would be the Red Trail. The Red Trail fits in with Ulnatol's whole bleed theme, and it's boots about causing yourself to bleed. You have to use unaffected by bleeding in some way to negate the downside. You could just play a Slayer. What if you don't want to? Why not make the boots grant immunity or unaffected by corrupted blood? This means you will need to still solve regular bleeding, such as with a Watcher's Eye, but since we have other solutions that give both, I don't want to just have both everywhere. If both are everywhere, then there's no point in it being a non-bleed in the first place. Even if the non-bleed thing was really just to prevent people from scaling Corrupting Fever's damage far too easily. Another item that comes to mind is Belly of the Beast. It's an extra gore item, so it goes with bleeding theme, and sees enough use that people will get value out of it. It's not necessarily going to be your best in slot endgame, but it is farmable in SSF, so this could be a really great solution for players to target. It might say something like, Immune to Corrupting Blood. Earlier, I called out the Pantheon, Soul of Ralakash, which, while being the anti-bleed Pantheon, has the major flaw of limiting Corrupted Blood to 5 stacks rather than 10, but 5 stacks are still more than enough to kill you. So maybe we should shrink this down a bit and limit it to 3. I don't know if 3 is necessarily the correct number, or if 3 is enough to completely melt you anyway. I don't know what the exact number is to allow a Pantheon to reduce the damage to a point where your Leech or Regen will cover it, maybe your Life Flask, without it just saying immune. So at the end of the day, it could just be the better solution to say, Corrupted Blood cannot be inflicted on you if you have Drek the Apex Hunter for Soul of Ralakash. I'm sure these aren't the only solutions, and I could definitely see there being a lot of room in item design going forwards in Path of Exile to give players more interesting ways to interact with ailments, either by reducing their effects, turning negatives into positives, or negating them entirely. There's an opportunity cost to this that wasn't really the same as giving up a suffix on a flask, so this does make for more interesting game design in the end. But if at the end of the day, the only thing to do is just wear a Corrupted Blood Jewel, that doesn't really change very much, since wearing Corrupted Blood Jewels has been popular since as far back as I can remember. Probably since as far back as the corruption existed. Which gets me to my last pet peeve. Bleeding cannot be inflicted on you is an incredibly rare ring corruption, requiring level 85. It's rare and it should be powerful. And it was very powerful and rewarding to corrupt a bunch of good rings and hit bleeding or poison cannot be inflicted on you. That value instantly went away when you'd still have to solve Corrupted Blood. Why spend so much time and so much expense for something that really isn't better than a jewel that's 1,000 times easier to obtain? It really feels like with this one, the value proposition is a bit out of whack. So again, here I'd be in favor of making it a bleed and Corrupted Blood mod, giving you the extra defenses to reward you for corrupting a bunch of expensive items, as it's always healthy for the economy, especially in softcore trade, when people destroy expensive items. But that's all I have for today. I just wanted to brainstorm some ideas on how Corrupted Blood immunity could be worked into Path of Exile in a way that gives players options without making players feel like they have to use one specific thing, otherwise they just die. I'm sure there's a percentage of, especially the softcore trade population, who's totally fine dying over and over and over again. But I know that's not most people, and it's always good to have options. Of everything I've outlined here, what do you think is your favorite? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and if you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. A special thanks to my YouTube channel members and patrons, whose generous support keeps me from needing to accept sketchy mobile game sponsorships. If you want the best way to keep up with my video releases and live streams, or maybe just hang out and chat with a bunch of like-minded people, be sure to join the Discord. You can find all these links down in the description below. Thank you again, and I hope you have a great day.